rendering some subset of them, merging in. There's interesting systems questions that until we have hardware, we can't really know, because a lot of people have theories about what will or won't suck for if you look over and it's blurry, but my experience has always been you're just guessing at that point until you actually make something. Like one of the things that we've been doing with the video streaming is view-dependent resolution. So higher resolution in the front, blurry there, and so you look over here and it's blurry, and then it crisps up when the server kind of catches up to where you're looking. And yeah, you notice it, but it's not like you're like, oh my god.
As bad as it.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm happy I've got the resolution, I understand this, and I suspect that we can live for a frame or two of latency
and
there.
noticing that people tend not to move too much with VR. You can watch everything you want, but most of the time you stand still and watch this kind of area. So there are probably a lot of optimization that can be made.
So that's one of the things that I've come to a conclusion of in the last year, where we've been focusing on the full panoramic video because that's the full immersive thing. And the Felix and Paul stuff is great. That's usually our go-to demo. When you want to show somebody VR, you show them like Intro to VR and Zarkana and Patrick Watson, that type of stuff. And it's lower resolution that you want. We can fix that resolution with this view-dependent streaming. But it does seem clear now that there is a lot of content that people would like to just focus ahead on. So doing just stereo wide-angle cameras, if you know it's all going to be in front of you, that's so much cheaper and easier to produce. There's no stitching. I think there's a lot to be said for that. You do wind up, if you look over, you see the edge of the world, and that hurts your immersion. You want to put some kind of a frame around it. But we have no commercial content for this right now, and part of it's because we don't have a proper player for it. And that's one of the big things I've been doing with the VR script stuff. It's really easy for me to make different camera distortion meshes. So I made a cylindrical panorama one, I made a GoPro dwarf. This is where exactly what you'd want to do for some of these other camera approaches. Because right now, producing VR content is terrible. You know, it's just a lousy experience. We can't even tell people just go buy this camera.
Yeah.
It's like buy some crazy multi-GoPro rig. That's no way to be doing creative work. It's technical grunt work right now. Hopefully that is real close to being fixed. We've got 3 or 4 different companies that are about there with with panoramic, but not stereo cameras. And I think that's okay, because right now, stereo is important, but we're still fighting our bandwidth, our decoder bandwidth limits. So right now, to get stereo, you lose half the resolution, and that's a toss-up. For some people legitimately say, without the stereo depth, I don't care. It's like I'm looking at the inside of a globe. But then some people say, oh, it's so blurry, how can you look at that? So we're at the point of pain right now. Hopefully, it's been announced next year that at least on the Snapdragon, I'm pretty sure on the Exynos chips, we will at least be doubling the decoder bandwidth in phones coming up next year. NVIDIA's been shipping it in their K1 for the last better part of this last year. So I've been kind of going, Samsung, NVIDIA's doing it right now. Do you want to get left behind NVIDIA? And so I think everybody's on board with that. So that doubling helps, but really we wanted a factor of 8. You know, we want 2 more doublings after that. So with that doubling plus a 4x for view dependent, then we can get to the point where we're display limited, and then all the videos can look as good as the static 360 photos, which will be
the view dependent stuff is only working for streaming videos, or it's something that you can use also in local videos?
No, it works. Okay, you would not want to use it for local videos because you make 30 copies of it. So this is a Facebook scale operation where the video goes up into ingestion and then it makes 30 different versions of it optimized in all the different ways.
It's amazing, but streaming with video through network will be better than local video.
It can be it basically gives you a 4x benefit for whatever bit rate. So on a local system, and the bit rate, you can always kill it on the local one, because you can throw 100 megabits per second off of your local SD card and get essentially negligible compression artifacts. But you are stuck then at the resolution limit. So yes, it is possible that you could have some remotely streamed video that is higher pixel density than what you could achieve on from a locally streamed thing. And that's unfortunate, where the alternate direction of doing view-dependent streaming would have been to break things up into a whole bunch of tiles, where right now the view-dependent is still one big panorama, but it's scrunched down blurry in the back and stretched out with extra pieces in the front. The other approach would have been to say, divide the world into 100 little squares, and allow you to stream those in different sets of different amounts as you look around. And that could be done locally, but I was kind of terrified at the idea of asking the Android video codec system to decode 100 streams at once, even if it was within the bandwidth limits. And I've heard from some other people that, yeah, things fall apart after 4 streams or something, and that just has all the earmarks of I wouldn't want to trust the infrastructure to do that right. But that would then allow you to deliver it on local content. I'm sure we will wind up doing kind of trade show demos where we take 128 megabyte card system and just load it all up with that, and it has all of them, and they're all high bit rate, and then it looks like the moving 360 photos. Then we could literally take some of this stuff and render the metaverse, and and make a little short movie from that and have it all moving, and that'll be awesome.
It would be impressive.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on LASIK eye surgery or corrective means to have a better experience?
I need to go back. I actually looked into that like 5 years ago for myself, because my eyesight's not great even with glasses, and I was told I'm not a candidate because I've got too much astigmatism, lumpy eyeballs there. I need to go back and check to see if the state of the art has improved more, because I do wind up kind of jamming the stuff on over my glasses, and light leaks through the
So
side.
you looked at your glasses, they seem like they're more ideal for your VR.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I do. I didn't used to use them in Gear VR until we started getting some higher quality content, and now it's like I kind of do want because I can adjust it and it helps. It's a heck of a lot better than like looking at a Rift without the adjustment, but I do still see better with my glasses jammed inside the Gear VR, and it's not an optimal experience.
So I'm hopeful. There are a couple techniques, whether LASIK or PRK, and it seems like
it's been great for a lot of people, and it is.
There's actually new techniques, like since about a year ago, they've been doing wavefront LASIK.
Yeah, so that's why it's on my list to check back up again, because it is a rapidly advancing field. And there again, you're in the computer imaging field about like so many things now are being driven by computer imaging. And in terms of a programming field to get into, computer vision is a good one. We have had trouble hiring all the CD people. I mean, we've had to acquire, basically. We've been buying up companies full of computer vision people because there's not a whole lot kind of free in the market right now.
Well, why don't you put a USB plug on the Gear VR so we don't have to pull the phone out and pull the phone in continuously?
So there's a power-only USB on the Galaxy 6 phones, but you can't use that for data and that turns out to be a fundamental technical reason, because there can only be one USB master on a USB bus. When the phone's plugged in, it's the master, and the sensor and touchpad are the slave. So there's no way you can talk to your computer because you can't have the computer and the phone both being a master. So that's a problem. We use Wi-Fi ADB for.
Me too, but it's kind of slow for
yeah.
deploying along big packages. I mean.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's unfortunate. In fact, we had a long thread internally about why does ADB transfer performance suck so bad? Because if you notice, if you've got the Windows kind of Gear VR Samsung thing, you can copy a 1 gig file on there, and it copies pretty quick. Sure. But if you do an ADB push on a 1 gig file, you're like, oh my god, this is
go at lunch.
So
any Unreal project takes a lot.
So something is just broken in Google's ADB implementation. I don't know what it is, and there was a thread internally about should we try to do something about this, and it came down to it's like Facebook and Google. They're like, we could pay somebody to go do it, but we probably don't want to have our people go do it for whatever company reasons.
Does Oculus talk to Google about the camera, the new camera design? Yeah.
So I mean, I wish we had better relations with Google. Everybody's friendly. There's no animosity, but there's just that sense of like, sooner or later, we are going to be at cross purposes, and Facebook and Google are just wary of each other just because of the scale and size of their operations. The people that are there, I think that the people working on Google Cardboard are great. I think that
there should be compatibility.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we've talked about possibilities of. Should we make an SDK wrapper to let Google Cardboard apps deploy onto Gear VR to have a much better quality? And last time that came up, I went through the list of 20 best Cardboard apps, and I couldn't find anything worth that I thought was worth porting. But that's an interesting possibility. And then there's even talk about like, what do you go the other way? Should we have some way to deploy Oculus apps without all of the goodies from that? And they're questions that. It's not my area to be thinking kind of high-level strategy. There's legitimate concerns each way. From a technical level, I'm always like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. That would be pretty neat for them. That'd be pretty neat for them. Whether it winds up being a good direction to deploy our resources is another question. But there's I wish we had YouTube and Google Play Movies on Gear VR.
Too.
That would have been my. There are these slots that we need to fill for Gear VR to be a successful product.
This week or hear about it?
No, I've got directions that I want to. I think VR, the commerce side of things, I think storefronts is going to be really, really important, and maybe something like that gets spun up going forward. But just on the video side, you want something that's browse lots of videos, the infinite well of video content that YouTube is kind of the exemplar of. You need some way to have great streaming videos, Netflix sort of thing, where you can just you can stream your videos continuously, and then you need some way to download the movies for watching on airplanes and things like that. So these are all holes that we need to fill, and usually there's like a first choice, and then there's usually a market leader in each of these segments, and it'd be great if we get the market leader, but if not, then we pick who is interested in working with us, and we try to make them as great as possible on the platform.
Milk VR is kind of the same thing.
What?
Milk VR.
Yeah. So Samsung, in some ways, Samsung is our partner, and I'm glad that they did that, because I thought we should have been doing it at Oculus, that we should have had a great 360 streaming experience. And that's one of those areas where I'm not pleased with our performance over the last year. We are moving towards sort of Facebook dealing with a lot of. When Facebook goes big into panoramic content, I think that's going to be really important, and they're equipped to do that to scale. And I think that my vision for that is that everywhere, eventually we want to be in a world where every news story that you see and every article has photos and a little click for a panoramic photo, that you get that. Because I think that nowadays, whenever I look at some interesting photo, I wish that was a panoramic photo that I could go see right now. So it's going to take some years for that to kind of percolate out that level. But I do bet that in the next year we'll start seeing some trailblazers, kind of the bellwethers of different industries that get out in front of things and say, it's like, okay, our content also has has 360 content that you can experience with it. And when we get that to the point where if you're browsing on your phone, you just have a little view and gear VR button, that's what I want to see in the relatively near future.
Even though you have to then take the phone, put it in the VR.
So then what you want to do is you want to make sure that would rarely be worth it for one photo. In fact, you can make a link right now. There's a 360, Oculus 360 photo scheme that you can make a link right now that will cause that to happen. But the critical part after that is you need to have the thing, all right, you finish that, you might also like this, view all those things. And of course YouTube and Facebook have this down to a science about how you get somebody to watch something, and then next thing you know, an hour has passed and they're still watching things there. And we have none of that kind of pull in VR yet. We don't have enough content to draw a path between that, and then we don't have the software that's drawing the path that takes people through there.
The Oculus Home is great because you can jump from one application to the other, just keeping the headset on.
Yep.
I think that probably would be useful, something for the web that links to.
So yeah, there's a lot of debate right now about where we wind up going with my VR script system, because this is one of those things where you can use it as a development tool, and I use that to hack around. And like when I'm talking about building different distortion screens for things, I use it for that and trying out different layouts for UI stuff. But one of the paths that I hope it takes is as this kind of more open web, where you can, because my demos of it are set up as links, where there's a silly little menu that links to 5 other things, and you go in there and you come back out, and it's kind of web-like, and I am excited about that as a model, but there's a lot of questions about, how does that interact with the store? Do we curate things? How are we legally responsible for our duty of care to the consumers? And there's a lot of questions with that right now. We don't have the answers yet. We've got meetings next week and the week after to kind of figure some of this stuff out. But yeah, you want to be in that point where you want to be able to put on the headset, and then you come out when it overheats and the battery runs out. You don't leave because you ran out of stuff to do, which is what happens right now. It's just not that hard to have done downloaded every app in the App Store and tried basically everything out. and that's clearly not a successful platform at that point. Hopefully it's the kernel that you wind up getting the chicken and the egg stuff. If you need lots of users in to get lots of developers and the time lag to do all of that. But I think we're hoping that we're just at the viable point now. When we go consumer now, we've got 80 some odd things in the store. We'll probably get another 20 by the end of the year. So we've got 100 things you can choose to go do. We will have a couple of these bottomless wells of content, and we're announcing a few things at the keynote tomorrow. That several things ranging from great to best thing in the world that we can get for VR. And yes, the thing, my quest has been fulfilled for this. Some good stuff.
Positional tracking on mobile. It was a huge bummer to read Palmer say that yesterday. How far off is that?
So I spent a while on that, and I am confident that I could do a good job with stereo cameras. So you're left with the problem there of, if you put them in the headset, then either you need to have processing in the headset and you build a whole other system there, or you need to push all the data through USB 3 into the phone, which is going to take up a lot of power before it winds up being processed there. So it does not look good for making a system that an inside-out tracking system that doesn't consume a whole lot of battery power. What I wanted to have happen was, especially the Snapdragon chipset has an internal architecture that I think is very well suited for that, where in addition to the CPU and the GPU, they've got a DSP, which is optimized for running at these fixed frequencies, very wide data accesses, and the important thing is cameras can directly stream into that. So the research I was doing was sort of predicated on this thought that if I can make it work now and it overheats the phone in 10 minutes, then we could deploy it onto something like a Snapdragon, and that would then run in 100 milliwatts of power or something, because it could barely hit DRAM, stream directly in, process raw images. I think that could probably work out, but we need something for the sense of scale. So I think we probably want stereo cameras for it. Either that, or you have to start estimating where things are in the world. I was trying to estimate scale using the accelerometer, and I was not getting good enough data from it. I mean, I didn't spend that much time on it, so maybe it is possible, but that's one of my three things that I may, when I get back from Connect here, I've kind of got three major directions that I can choose to spend some time on, and going back and taking another swing at position tracking with stereo inside-out cameras is one of the directions I want to do. It does, it bugs me a little bit. We have like 30 computer vision experts at Oculus from the different companies we've acquired, and none of them want to just go solve this problem. They're all working on their more esoteric kind of researchy things. Well, this is a problem that I want solved right now. I wish somebody had spent all of this last year on it. We did have one of the 13th Lab guys took the framework that I had done earlier in the year, and they integrated some of their code, and so they had a basic inside-out tracking system for running on Gear VR. It was, it's nowhere near shippable production quality, but it was better than what you got from like Vuforia. That was something that I did a couple of years ago, was integrated Vuforia, and you just have to move so slow before it loses tracking. The 13th Lab stuff worked better. It built a map, and you could, we had the paper town model scene from the Oculus, the previous Connect demos there, and it was neat to look at that. It's all kind of jittering around like you'd have from a Tango or something like that, but you could do that, and it showed where you want to go, but it wasn't clear that there was a path from that to a fully shippable application. And then the other huge thing is just it takes a lot of power, and power is a really big deal on mobile, where right now we have to go something that runs steady state, like cinema, our movie player. We can only use a quarter of the power of the system. We basically can, you have to use less than one full CPU core and clock down GPU. And it's painful at that point to say, it's like, okay, we can make 4 times more stuff going on, but it's just going to overheat in 10 minutes. I mean, you can actually make the phone overheat in 1 minute if you some of our dense CPU, like computer vision stuff and some of the CPU time warp stuff, we would literally have you take a cold phone, you start it up, it spins up all 4 cores doing processing work, and like 60 seconds later, the phone's hot to touch and overheating. So that's a problem with the inside-out tracking. I think it's solvable. I still don't have a ton of support inside the company from the researchers don't want to work on that problem specifically.
Rift is a higher priority.
Well, we don't have any computer vision people working full-time on gear at all, because the vision team is all working on, first, of course, all on the constellation tracking, and then everybody piles on touch, because touch was very problematic in getting the tracking working and increasing the scale. So they've been kind of panic piled onto those projects a lot. We've got yet more people in now, but they're working more on research, kind of future direction stuff. And it's stuff that's going to be critical when you do wind up understand the world around you fully. That's one of the most important tasks that technology in general is working on. So I have some sympathy for them where they look at this problem and think that it's just a plumbing sort of problem, and the kind of big brain CD people don't want to work on it right now. So I may yet have to wind up doing it myself, which is not
Are we gonna see cameras on the Oculus Rift, on that wired one, anytime soon for augmented reality?
So at one point, well, augmented reality is not that interesting wired to a computer.